I don't know about that, but thank you. Hey, thanks for coming, everybody, tonight. My name is Keith Lehrman. I'm president of Tucson Organic Gardeners, if you don't know me. We have a pretty good, exciting presentation for you tonight, but I do have a few announcements before we get rolling. So this weekend, we have two events going on. We have a seed saving workshop that Nikki Radhe is putting on for us at, I believe it's New Spirit Community Garden. That's way out on the east side of Tucson. And then there's a tomato sale this weekend at Rincon Heights. It supports their garden, Rincon Heights Community Garden, and it also supports the Pollinator Equity Project. I believe they're $2 or $4 depending on the size. So that's also this weekend. I believe that's 10 to 1, I believe. Yeah. And then yours is 1 to 2, right? It's the same day, Saturday. It's the same day. Yes, they are. Yeah, it's the 21st. They're both on the same day. Also, we're having an event. There's a new, I won't say movement, but not really a movement, but there's a promotion going on across the country, and it started in Europe, called Regenerate. And they're trying to make these cities around the nation regenerative cities. And we're going to have an event at Blue Moon Garden, which is a community garden again, on March 5th from 4:30 to 7. And the idea is to make Tucson a national park city eventually. There's already 2 national park cities in the US, and there's several in Europe. So we're trying to make Tucson one next. So TOG is going to be part of that. So come out. There's going to be food trucks, big presentation by Robin Motzer from Sustainable Tucson. She's heading that up. So then we have the garden fair coming up. That's on March 21st, Arizona School for the Deaf and the Blind. Again, it's going to be our last time at that location. It's going to be from 8:30 to 1:30. So please come out. We're going to have lots of vendors again, same story, food, plants, seeds, etc. So it's always a fun time. And we also need volunteers for some of these events. So if you want to volunteer, we really could use the help. So it's always a fun time. And then we also have one other thing. We have a pollinator garden we're putting in at Keeling Community Garden, which is in central Tucson. And we are going to be installing plants and doing some earthworks on February 28th and March 1st from 10 to noon. And we could really use volunteers for that effort. So if you're up to it and you want to come out and have some fun, dig a few holes, plant some plants, and promote pollinators in Tucson, it'd be great. So I want to introduce, go ahead. Oh, sorry. I didn't follow the script. They are on the website. They're also on our new platform called Join It. That's our new members portal. If you get into that, you should have got an invite to go there. Then you could see all the events there as well. So. Yeah. Yeah, so it's true. The non-speaker events, I guess. Is it? Oh, the non-TOG events, sure. Yeah, sure. Yeah. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah. Yeah, Instagram, or is it Facebook and Instagram? Okay. Yeah, I'm not a social media person, so I don't know. So awesome. Yep. So join it, Instagram, Facebook, and then some of it's on our website and some of it's in our newsletter. So all of it. All right. That's fine. So this is a hybrid meeting. I want to remind you that there's people online, people here. I'd like people to silence their cell phones. Keep your conversations to a minimum so we can respect everybody and respect the speaker as well. I am going to try to get people to talk into a microphone when they have questions as I can. And then I'll ask the speaker to repeat the questions as well. So, all right, so I'm going to go ahead and introduce Guber Das. He's from Awareness Ranch. He's a permaculture designer and builder. Over 20 years of experience, I believe, just in the Tucson region. He has 2 degrees, one in geosciences from the U of A and another one in permaculture design, correct? And that's from the Sonoran Permaculture Guild, I believe. He's a founder of Awareness Ranch, Anatam Aquaponics, and also this thing called Dry Co-op, I believe, which is a mouthful. So I'd like you to welcome Guru. Thank you for coming.
Okay. And then should I? Yeah. All right. It's okay. You can. Okay. 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 I think my microphone is on. Do you think the people online can hear me right now? Okay. I'll try to project my voice a little bit. How's that? Is that better? Okay. So thank you guys for having me today. I'm going to start really broad with my discussion, and then I'm going to zoom in super close, and we'll talk about bacteria and atoms, and then we'll zoom back out again. First of all, I just want to start by mentioning my deep gratitude and that the material world is amazing in its variety. It's miraculous that anything exists at all. And so I'm very grateful to be here with you in this human form to be able to articulate some things that I think may be important. We're just going to welcome a couple of people. So permaculture design is a design system that I use to help me create aquaponics systems. And when we're learning about permaculture, we like to envision a permaculture tree. The trunk of the tree is like the main meat and potatoes, the main subject of discussion. And as we move up the tree towards the larger branches, those are some discrete subjects in the permaculture design field. And then we move farther along those branches to the twigs and the leaves. And those are the more minute conversations that we may be having with a select group of people, right? So let's say we're engaging in a huge project and we've got all of our core members in that project sitting at a table. We're going to try to have large tree trunk and large branch conversations. And then as we break that group up into smaller committees, we're going to have more twiggy conversations. So today I wanted to have a mixture of those conversations. I wanted to zoom out a little bit, then get super twiggy and talk about the bacteria and the nitrogen and the carbon cycle, and then zoom back out and see how that's important to us at a broader level. You may have heard of hydroponics or aquaponics. You've definitely heard of gardening, right? So aquaponics is one of the elements that I will place in my broader permaculture design when I'm designing a property. So a lot of my work that I do to support myself and my family requires permaculture design and natural building and landscaping work. So I work with a company called Awareness Ranch, and we build natural buildings that are designed to capture the sunlight, rainwater, and also take into account the natural setting that our infrastructure will be built in. Because we see the building as part of a larger system of things. And for us human beings to inhabit a landscape, we should be able to do that in a way that's responsible and not destructive to the landscape. So one of the things I like to tag some of my social media posts, I like to place this little hashtag of nonviolent architecture. So the concept of nonviolence in Sanskrit is called ahimsa. And so when we engage in permaculture design, we want to follow 3 ethics. The first ethic is earth care, care for the earth. The second ethic is people care, care for people. And the third ethic is fair share. And that one we can expand on a little bit. I think it can mean something different for each person, but for me, the fair share ethic means that anything we do, any endeavor, we want to produce a yield. We want a tangible outcome that serves our personal need. But if we're successful in meeting our need and there is a surplus resource after our need is met, we want to reinvest that surplus back into the system. So reinvesting back into the greater system is a great way to think of that third ethic of fair share. Okay? So Homo sapiens are a very intelligent primate, and just like any species that occupies a certain habitat, we have a very special niche. We have a responsibility, an ecosystem function to support. We have a role in the environment. And it seems that we are confused and we do not understand that role. When we observe nature, we see that everything is connected to everything else. And every organism is supporting some function. Homo sapiens have a great capacity to transform the landscape. We have the ability to change the species around us by manipulating our environment. A classic example of a keystone species is the beaver. The beaver has a great capacity to transform the landscape, and it could be beneficial to the environment, creating marshland, ecosystems that filter water, hold the water on the landscape, and host more diversity of biology. Homo sapiens have an even greater capacity to transform the landscape. And just like the beaver, we can engage in manipulating and transforming the landscape to harvest and utilize some of the surface phenomenon that crosses our path. And the buildings that we design at Awareness Ranch intend to do that very thing. So a building just like this one can house us, but it's also going to require us to encounter surface phenomenon like the wind and the rain and the changing solar patterns. And so when we keep that in mind, we can have a building that isn't as destructive on the landscape and that could actually generate a surplus yield that can be reinvested back into the greater system. So when we engage in design that is thoughtful, we can meet and exceed our needs, and we can increase biodiversity around us. by serving our ecosystem function. And so I like to explicitly articulate what that ecosystem function is because we have forgotten it. And it's been part of my life path to try to understand what is my niche here? What am I here to do? And I believe that Homo sapiens, we place predatory pressure on large herds of grazing animals so that they do not stay in one place, just like any other predator on the landscape would do. We also, so that's not a unique niche, right? That's just a thing we do similar to other predators. But one thing that the other predators do not do is we start fire. We spark the first flame and we spread fire. We are responsible for fire ecology. We clear the landscape of fuel so that the fires that occur are less severe. When we allow the fuel to load in our forests by putting the fires out, we create a dangerous fire ecology that creates crown fires that are high intensity fires that destroy forests. When we look to the past, we see that there were regular low intensity ground fires, not crown fires. And those low intensity ground fires were spread intentionally by humans entering into new landscapes, chasing after animals in order to prevent devastating fire to our temporary settlements. We would light the landscape on fire to clear it. That would drop carbon back down to the soil, and it would promote seedlings and germination, which would then attract some of our prey animals. And that would allow us to safely occupy an environment. So the modern day human, I think, needs to have some connection to this fire. And I think we all do. We all have fire in our homes. But if we maintained our landscapes in a healthy way, where instead of hauling organic matter away, we try to maintain all organic residues on site. And that's one of the activities that we do when we engage in regenerative practices. So in order for us to have sustainability, we cannot go from degenerative practices to sustain. We're missing the middle portion of the path to sustainability. Regenerating is that middle portion. We go from degenerative to regenerative, and eventually we may be able to be sustainable. But we can't just make this great leap to sustainability without engaging in regenerative practices. And so aquaponics is one of those regenerative practices. And a part of my aquaponics practices includes this niche of maintaining my landscape and creating biochar by burning fires in my yard with my family and friends. And this weekend, Awareness Ranch is going to be hosting a biochar workshop on Saturday morning. If you go to our website, you can sign up for a biochar workshop, and we will make biochar. And at 12 o'clock, we will also make some wood-fired pizza in our Adobe pizza oven. And that's another way that we use the wood on our landscape. And it's part of this practice of being a human being, is regular fire. And all of the products of the fire are maintained on site to enrich our gardens. So I'm going to zoom in now. We've been talking about this main trunk of permaculture, some of the branches. Now we're going to get into a twiggy conversation. So aquaponics is a practice of aquaculture, which is raising of aquatic plants and animals. It's like gardening in the water, but it's specifically water plants and animals, is this aquaculture. And then hydroponics is the cultivation of annual plants in a soilless medium. So aquaponics is a portmanteau. It's like a new word that is the combination of aquaculture and hydroponics. And it is the culture of aquatic plants and animals and annual and perennial land plants. Okay? So a lot of people will describe aquaponics as a closed system because it recycles water over and over. But I want to make a correction. I think it is factually incorrect to describe anything as a closed system. By definition, a closed system is one that does not interact with the rest of the universe. And just like a frictionless system in physics, that doesn't exist. Everything is in communication and connection to everything else. There is no escaping it. And so aquaponics is a very open system. And just like the Earth system is an open system, the Earth, it's debatable, but I've seen lots of figures. About 100 metric tons of space dust is raining down on the Earth every single day. 100 metric tons of space dust is raining down on the Earth. So even the Earth is not a closed system. And our aquaponic system similarly is not closed, it is open. So we want to design the system to be open to the influence of sunlight, rain, and even space dust. So what we start with is we start with containers. In the photograph to my left, there's a large open container that holds water. And you can see there is rays of sunlight shining on that water. This is an aquatic algae bed. Instead of trying to exclude the influence of the environment, I wanted to invite the influence of the environment into my aquaponic system. And so here, where we have light and water and air in combination, we are able to grow algae. Cyanobacteria, in fact, is the thing that we're kind of after. So the air we're breathing right now is comprised mostly of inert nitrogen gas, N2. It is very difficult to separate N2 because there's a triple bond. And I believe it takes like 16 units of ATP to break this bond to get one NH3 molecule, which is now bioavailable. So this N2 gas is written like this. 78% of the air we're breathing is this N2 gas. And nothing on the planet Earth can break this triple bond except for lightning and cyanobacteria, because it takes so much energy to break that bond. So we have to have an aquatic environment where sunlight, air, and water can meet so that we can host the primary productivity of cyanobacteria. All of the productivity on the surface of the Earth, all biology requires amino acids as a basic building block for proteins and fat and sugars. We can't have any of the carbohydrates or proteins that we need to exist without breaking this bond. And the only organism known on the planet that can break that bond is the cyanobacteria or the blue-green algae. So we start by making a container, just like that one with the turtle. And once we have that container, cyanobacteria will arrive. You don't even have to put it in there because it's open to the system and we cannot escape the dust that falls into that thing. So once we're able to break this bond, we can create organic molecules, the other amino acids. So we can break that bond and we can create this right here, ammonia or ammonium. Okay, so this is the byproduct of primary productivity. But this is not useful to the plants yet. We need to rely on a few other types of bacteria. So the next bacteria in your aquatic system is going to be the nitrosomonas. And they turn the NH3 into NO2 minus. So write this down. This might be meaningless to you right now, but it's going to be cool in just a sec. So this is the product of nitrosomonas. This is the product of cyanobacteria using nitrogenase and their metabolic process and sunlight energy to break the N2 bonds into ammonium. And then we get nitrite, which is NO2 minus, and then NO3 minus. This is nitrate. This is what we're after. So cyanobacteria. Then we have nitrosomonas. And then they create this. They create this. And then we have nitrobacter. And they create this. So they're adding hydrogen atoms, breaking a bond, adding hydrogen atoms, then breaking a bond and adding oxygen atoms, breaking another bond, adding more oxygen. And this all happens in water. And so what we see when we first make this aquatic system, if we have time and we have concentration of bacteria, we start with nothing. And then slowly we grow cyanobacteria, and then they're limited, and then their population dwindles. Something like that. That's the primary productivity. The secondary is going to be the nitrosomonas. Their population will start to grow. And then they will dwindle. And then the nitrobacter, their populations will start to grow. Then they will dwindle. And we'll find that these concentrations will follow that exact same pattern. And now we can grow plants. So this is what's happening in the water. Whether you're feeding the water or not, without fish, nothing. If you just have a container with water and you left it outside long enough, this would happen. And if you left it for 12 months, you would find that there is now nitrates in that water ready to fertilize your plants. All on its own without any influence from you, just by having a container of water outside. So now if we designed a system where this was useful to us, we may be able to produce an abundance of fruits and vegetables and animals without having to input some export from somewhere else, right? So it's important for us to understand that Homo sapiens have a really strong grasp on this material world, and we can design super amazing things into our systems if first we observe how do these systems work. All of the organic matter has been produced first by the availability of ammonium from cyanobacteria. So when we design these systems, instead of trying to eradicate the algae, let's create a home for the algae. So that first slide was the home for the algae. Can we go to the second picture, Barbara? Okay, here's some fish that we've grown in the desert, and we've used solar power and rainwater to do it. This tank that I'm sitting in is a steel rainwater culvert that's been tipped up and sunk in the ground 4 feet down, and there's 4 feet above ground so that I can view my fish, but animals and small children cannot fall in. Here, I'm growing tilapia in the desert. So in permaculture, we say the problem is often a solution. So one of the problems with the desert is that we have limited water resource. But maybe that's a solution to something. Maybe our limited water resource will change our behavior to be more resourceful with our water. And so I've applied that permaculture design thinking to these aquatic systems. And I'm able to use the water multiple times. First, I use it to grow algae. Then I use it to grow fish. Now can we go to the next picture, Barbara? Here we go. Here's a great example. So the water flows to the top of the table first from a single pump where it has access to sunlight. That water in turn shades rabbit hutches below so that they have a comfortable environment to live in. Below the rabbits, their droppings can touch the ground, and now chickens can come down and pick through their droppings and eat the insects that are growing in there. And the water flows from the top of that table to underground and then back to the top of this little grow bed here, where I'm growing lemongrass, mint, sweet potatoes. All of the productivity in that grow bed is based off of the primary productivity of the algae bed above. I never once put fish food in this system. I let it age slowly over a year before I even tried planting plants in the system. We go to the next picture. Here we go. Here's an example of inert volcanic rock in the grow bed. There is no nutrient in this other than the nutrient that's been accumulated over time by the Earth system itself. I'd never put anything in there. But slowly, organic material accumulates. Birds and insects visit the system. There's freshwater shrimp, amphipod crustaceans that appeared in the system, all on their own. Snails appeared in the system. Small fish appeared in the system because it's open to the influence of the ecosystem around it. All we got to do is be open, just be a little bit open, okay? And be patient. So through this accumulation of organic matter over time, the grow bed will accumulate humic and fulvic acids, humus, composted organic materials, dark carbon-rich sludge will form. And eventually, you may see red wriggler worms in the system. If you don't want to wait, you can add these things. You could go to your local pond store, get a scoop of their water. You could go to the Sweetwater Reclamation Park, scoop up some of that nasty water. That would start an aquaponics just fine. But what we find is that the phenomenon of the rain hitting the ground, saturating the soil, and forcing worms to the surface is because there's no oxygen in that water. When the ground becomes oxygen depleted, those worms have to come to the surface for air. In an aquaponic system that's continuously cycling 24 hours a day, the water is very aerated. It's oxygen rich. And so the worms can live in that inorganic rock medium under the water because they're actually breathing through osmosis through their skin. They're absorbing oxygen right through their skin. They don't have lungs. And They're consuming bacteria and fungi with their soft mouth. They don't have teeth, right? So they're requiring the secondary and tertiary productivity to produce their own metabolism and grow and reproduce. But what we find is that any fruit cuttings that we place into this rock media quickly send roots out. So that's a grape cutting that I took from a grape in my yard and I placed into that rock material. And we're able to clone citrus, pomegranates, figs, you name it. The only thing I've had trouble with is stone fruits. Can we go to the next picture now? So this is an example of the bed that was growing off of that primary productivity of the algae bed. The bed is made out of a bulk container, and I wrapped the bed in reclaimed lumber from a house that was being remodeled. I was remodeling a home, and some of the materials that were coming out of it, I wanted to divert from the waste stream. And so I constructed this. And there's lemongrass in the middle, mint on the outside, and in the lower right corner, there's a sweet potato. Ipomea batatas. That is the white sweet potato. And it has an edible leaf, and it has a large tuber. And to my surprise, the tubers can grow directly in the rock media. We go to the next image. This is another aquaponic system. This was the second aquaponic system that I built for a client. This one is interesting. It's also made out of reclaimed materials. It's a mountain volcanic rock from the foundation of the Small Planet Bakery that was destroyed in downtown Tucson. I wanted to preserve those stones, take them out of the waste stream. That's mint that's cloned from that previous mint bed. That's a pomegranate that was cloned from the pomegranate in my yard. And there's a grapevine on the left, which was that grape clone that was in the previous picture, also from my backyard. This aquaponics system is a very interesting system because it was the first aquaponics system that used airlift pumping. So an airlift pump, if you read the engineering literature, they will say an airlift pump is not as efficient as a submersible pump in terms of its energy consumption per volume of water transported. But most commercial aquaculture and aquaponics systems require two pumps. They require an air pump for aeration and a water pump for water flow. If you combine those two things, you will find that an airlift pump is more efficient. And one of the limiting factors of an airlift system is the depth of the container. So if my airlift is restricted to this depth, and I'm injecting bubbles here, creating a mixed fluid, right? I can pump a head height. If this is 1, this should be 7. So the ideal ratio is 7:1 of submerged depth to lift height. Okay, well then, if we want this to be efficient and run for a dynamic range of parameters, all we have to do is think outside of this container. This might be one of the most important things that I've ever figured out. And I believe that this is ancient knowledge. This is not an invention by me. So do not tell anybody that I invented this. This is not me. This is somebody else, and I just refigured it out. If we go outside of the tank, let's say we drill a hole in the tank, and we put a 90-degree fitting, and then I put a T-fitting right here, right? I can drill down as deep as I want. And then I can go as high as I want. that lift pipe, and then I can discharge. And all I've got to do is bring an air line down to the bottom of this and cap it off. And now if I inject bubbles in here, what I'm doing effectively is I'm creating a buoyant column of fluid. So we're not taught the metric system, but basically, let's see here if I can draw this thing out. So a cubic centimeter of water weighs 1 gram per cubic centimeter. That's basically the basis of the metric system. Static water at sea level, at standard temperature and pressure, is 1 gram per cubic centimeter. That's a density. If I mix air bubbles into that, I am now less than 1 gram per cubic centimeter. I'm at a fraction of it. Let's say I'm 3/4 of it. Whatever the number is, it depends on the size of the bubble and the volume of bubbles. This now wants to float to the surface because the static water here is exerting a pressure. Because fluid dynamics, the pressure of this fluid is constant throughout the entire system, and it just changes by depth. We've got 14 pounds of atmospheric pressure plus 0.47 pounds per foot of depth. So if I go down, let's say 10 feet, I need to produce at least 5 pounds of pressure in my air hose to deliver water 10 feet down. So a low pressure, high volume pump, like a septic aerator pump, can produce enough pressure to lift over 1,000 gallons per hour with a system just like this. Now you're aerating the water and you're circulating the water with one electronic component, and the electronics do not enter the water. It's just a hose pumping air. And now your electronic component can be in a shed, it could be in the garage, right? It could be in a dry environment under a roof where water and electricity don't have to mix. Another cool thing about this is fish, leaves, snails, any solid matter can float through this system. It won't stop the pumping. An impeller-based aquaponics system will require maintenance every few days because the pump has to have a foam or net or mesh filter that will get clogged with organic matter. This pumping system requires almost no maintenance because there is nothing to be clogged. All right, this is a very twiggy conversation, but this is like huge for me. This is like the best thing ever. And we have multiple examples of this in Tucson now. And it can all be done with rainwater and solar power. So it's not going to require an intense amount of imported material or energy from somewhere else. We can just use the surface phenomenon of sunlight and rain to create an aquaponics system that runs relatively maintenance-free. But it will require a few months of aging in order to accumulate the organic matter we need to grow a robust harvest of vegetables and fruits. So that's something to note, Nikki, for that project you're working on. Those plants are going to struggle for a few months. But it'd be great to clone things in because you don't need nutrient solution to clone any types of tree cuttings. So one of the things that we found with these aquaponics systems is that they are extremely good at cloning. We have like over 90% success rate with our fruit tree cuttings. And you can do it at pretty much any time of the year because they're not limited by, I don't know, I don't know. Actually, I don't really know why it clones so well. It just does. I think it might be a mixture of just like the aquatic biology in there and the maybe the exclusion of like soil fungi or pathogens that might otherwise rot the wood. Um, yeah, and the air. Yeah, yeah, these systems don't become anaerobic. Um, you have a question, Paul?
Where the tank is, how is that connecting with the bubbles?
Okay, so what we'll do is we'll send an air hose down this.
Yeah.
And then there's a few components in this airlift system, and I'll draw it right here. So there is a well pipe, and then there is an internal lift pipe. And then there can be an air hose, like a 1/4 inch or 3/8 inch air hose that gets connected to the bottom of the lift pipe, and it injects bubbles here. And I like to use a 1/4 inch air injector orifice. So I get these little 1/4 inch air bubbles. And I like to use a 3 or 4 inch outer pipe. And my inner pipe, I like to use 1 to 1.5 inch lift pipe. And then this line is either a 1/4 inch or 3/8. And then this orifice here is a 1/4 inch. Aquaponics system? Oh, she's asking what is the system called? This airlift system? This pumping system? This is just called an airlift pump.
Okay, because I know you're talking.
Okay, yeah, if you look up an airlift pump, there's some information. It's not too clear. Like this isn't drawn out like this. But the fluid dynamics of this is very interesting because it's a mixed fluid. It requires some pretty intense calculations. I think it's like a Taylor series equation or something to figure out these flow rates. But we figured out these pipe sizes experimentally. And we like to use something like a 1/4 horsepower or a 1/2 horsepower compressor, which consumes somewhere between 100 and 500 watts of continuous energy. At my farm, what we call Awareness Ranch, we have a 500-watt air compressor that runs continuously 24 hours a day, and it services 3 15-foot wide by 60-foot long greenhouses and 2 8-foot tall, 8-foot wide rainwater culvert ponds full of tilapia and koi fish. And we're cloning a bunch of stuff and producing lots of veggies and herbs. And it's using this same exact system here. So this is how we pump the water. We've made nutrients. We've created a container. We've got lava rock as our grow media. There are all kinds of different grow media you can use. We use scoria. Scoria is the term that we use for lava cinders that are small. So small lava cinders are called scoria. And we like to use 3/4 inch scoria cinders as our grow medium. And then our grow beds, we like to use 1/4 inch minus lava sand aggregates to make a custom lavacrete masonry that's insulating and also very beautiful. And all of our grow beds now are going to be made out of this scoria material, both the medium itself and the bed that it's made out of. Can we go to the next photo in my photo deck? Okay, so this is interesting. There's the Ipomea batatas. the white sweet potato. That is a humongous sweet potato grown out of soil in just rocks. And there are no rocks embedded in it. It exerted such a great pressure, it just pushed the rocks right out of the way. I didn't think that was possible, but it's totally possible. And I was able to make a bunch of nice sweet potato French fries with that thing. It was great. It wouldn't fit in a pot, so I had to cut it up. And then we can go to the next slide. And then here you can see some lettuces. So when people talk about aquaponics, most common thing that comes to mind is like lettuces. But I just wanted to show that you can grow way more than lettuce. But you see the roots on those red lettuces are very clean, white, healthy roots. So this is common occurrence in aquaponics. You have these very bright, white, healthy, aerated roots. There's no anoxic, anaerobic, sludgy dankness like you could get in a waterlogged soil. And so the things grow very rapidly as well. We can grow lettuce in like a half the time that you would be able to grow it in soil. And I think it's because they're not like competing with anything for the nutrients in that soilless medium. And then when it's time to harvest, they come out clean. And so one of the things we had a lot of success with in the past was selling live lettuce. And we would just wrap those roots up and we'd sell the whole plant with its root. And it would store much longer in your refrigerator. It wouldn't wilt very quickly because it's still alive. I think that might be the last image in my deck. So I'm going to go back to what I was previously talking about, how human beings are a keystone species. We're like the major mover and shaker on terrestrial Earth right now. And I think it's super important for us to identify our role. It's so easy to feel insignificant, especially when we're bewildered and bombarded by media. And a lot of the things that we're hearing and seeing and reading are extremely negative. But as this bad news keeps being made, there's some good news too. The good news is that we are extremely powerful, even at the individual level. And our decisions that we make that are closest to us are the decisions that we have the most power over. So the decision of where you place your attention today, where you place your attention tomorrow, the food that you put in your fridge, the food that you put on your plate, the food that you serve to your family and your neighbors, you choose. You decide where you get that food, how that food is being grown. It is up to us to make conscious decisions about how we spend our time and attention. No one can control that. We have ultimate control over the decisions that are the most close to us. And so as the news gets crazier and crazier out there, I want us to remember that as the power structure scrambles to maintain power, we hold the power over our own time and attention and what we're choosing to invest in. And so I'll just leave you with that.
Hold on.
Just a sec, we've got a question back here.
I was wondering if there's any pests or, things that you have to protect against or do something to deal with.
Yeah,
is this-
absolutely. There's definitely pests. We see that there's aphids. Our largest pest is the javelina. Yeah, the collared peccary is the largest pest we have. It's the most difficult one to deal with. But we've noticed with the smaller pests, like the aphids, we've done really well with trap crops. So there are certain types of crops that attract aphids. One that we find is very attractive to aphids is like the brassicas. So we just grow some of those and the aphids go to that. So we can't apply pesticides directly to these systems because then we collapse the complex microbiology in them.
Where are you located?
We are located 30 minutes west of downtown in the southern Avra Valley. We're 7 miles south of the Desert Museum off of Sondario Road.
So when you like put the plants in the system, are you starting from transplants or are you like putting them in seeds? And if so,
We-
how do you do that?
We do both. We have some trays where we can start lots of seeds, and then we'll end up transplanting from those seedling trays into the rock media beds. And those beds, we like to have about 10 inches of depth to allow for all that root growth. And we can plant things much closer together than in a normal garden because they're not competing for nutrients, because new nutrients are being supplied to them all the time.
Yes, like you transplant them, like are they grown in dirt and then you put them in there, or do you like
No, we
put them
have
in
like these
full rock?
thin hydroponic trays that have either mats of like agave fiber or they'll have rock media in them. And we'll just sprinkle seeds and then we'll pluck the little seedlings and plant them into our deeper rock beds once they've gotten a little bigger. Mm-hmm. You can plant little soil packets into the aquaponic beds, and it's not too detrimental to the system to have a little bit of soil in it. But we like to start our seedlings in a little hydroponic tray.
Do you have a recommendation for a good local source of volcanic rock?
Yeah, so the volcanic rock that I like is the most local rock that I can get. It comes from Sholo. It's from Perkins Cinders, and they like to deliver it 15 tons at a time. I purchase 24 tons at a time. But if you can't purchase that much, you can go to D&D Materials or Acme Sand and Gravel, or even Arizona Trucking and Materials, I think gets deliveries of it as well. And there's the 3/4 inch, which is the grow media. And then there's like the finer sands that you could also purchase that can be mixed into soil as well. They didn't have it? I would try Acme Sand and Gravel then. Any other questions?
So if we were wanting to come out and visit you,
Sure.
do we make an appointment or do we show up? Or-
Yeah, we have an aquaponics workshop coming up next month. This month, we're doing a biochar workshop. Next month, we're doing an aquaponics workshop. And you can find our workshop schedule online at awarenessranch.com.
Okay. But what if one were just want to come out and see your setup?
We could set up like a private tour. It's not very common, but it is possible.
Okay. And then with the things that you're growing out there, are you hooked up to the farmers markets?
Yes, we sell at the Thursday Farmers Market at the Santa Cruz River Farmers Market, which I believe is at the MSA Annex.
So are you making
And also at the Sunday Market, which is at the Rito River Racetrack, which is called like the Heirloom Farmers Market, Sunday morning.
so are you able to sustain a living by growing?
No, definitely not. But I do get to eat a lot of delicious veggies, and I get to feed some people, which is important.
Okay, I have an online question. We have somebody asking, can you say more about the tilapia and how hydroponic beds are different from aquaponic beds?
Yeah. So I'll say that the tilapia are an African cichlid. They like warm water. They're a mouth brooder, so they hold their young in their mouths. They make thousands of fingerlings each breeding season, and they like warmer water temperatures above 70 degrees. So the desert is a great place to raise tilapia. The aquaponics system differs from a hydroponic system in that it includes the culture of aquatic animals and plants to produce the nutrients necessary for the perennial and annual land plants that are grown in the media beds. Hydroponics does not have the aquaculture component of aquaponics. Hydroponics relies on nutrient solutions which are purchased and delivered from a bottle. Aquaponics does not do that.
I was just going to say, I believe the volcanic like sand is really good fertilizer for fruit trees in the ground too.
Yeah. Yeah, that volcanic sand is a really good additive to any soil growing mix. It's really good for creating aeration and drainage. If you have a heavy clay soil, like we do at Awareness Ranch, because we're in a floodplain, we like to add that volcanic sand, especially for growing cacti. And one thing that I forgot to mention, the fire component of being a human, we can produce biochar with incomplete combustion of woody materials. And that biochar has carbon as a skeleton. It's just carbon basically. So we've taken a carbohydrate and we've reduced it down to just carbon. We've shed all of our hydrogen and nitrogen atoms. And these carbon atoms have 4 valence electrons that are unbonded. And this is really cool. Those unbonded valence electrons desperately want to connect with organic compounds in their environment. So they will grab on to any organic material nearby. And what we find when we look at the Amazon rainforest is that the precipitation is so great that any nitrogen in the soil would be washed into the Amazon River and sent out to the ocean. And it would not be possible to have such a lush forest. But when we look at the soil, we see it contains a bunch of carbon that is charred material that is holding on to those nitrogens by ionically bonding to the organic nitrogen in the environment that's found in the animal and human wastes and plant wastes. And they're cycling to detritus and humic and fulvic acids. These carbon atoms in the active biochar from slash and burn for thousands of years allows the Amazon rainforest to have ample nitrogen to continue to grow that huge overstory and understory full of fruits and vegetables and medicine. And it is because of humans creating charred material that exists. The same thing is applicable in our yards and our aquaponic systems. In all of my aquaponic systems, I put bags of biochar in net bags and I put them in the fish ponds. And then every year I pull that biochar out now that it's been packed with nitrogen and I bury it in the landscape around all of my trees. And so I am sequestering carbon and I'm fertilizing the soil by engaging in my own personal human activity of lighting fires, enjoying roasted marshmallows and hot cocoa with my young daughters. It's something that's enjoyable to do. It's not a chore. It's something that we do anyway. We have to cook food. We have to gather with our friends. We have to enjoy the landscape and trim our trees. We have to make sure that there's a safe fire boundary around our infrastructure. So every year we're collecting tree cuttings and we're burning them and creating this carbon skeleton, which can attract organic ions and then be banked in the soil. It's also useful for composting toilets, composting animal manures, creating soil. We sell a lot of composted pig and chicken manure, and we also sell activated biochar with duck muck in it. And if you request any of those items from us at the farmer's market, we'll bring them to you the next week.
The biochar, could you just get a little deeper into exactly what, I mean, are we talking ash, charcoal?
We're not talking ash. So one of the things that we like to do, so there's a couple ways to do it. We can get a small barrel, a 30-gallon barrel, and we can get a 50-gallon barrel. We can drill a bunch of holes in the 50-gallon barrel. And then we can just put a loose fitting lid on the 50-gallon barrel so this thing's upside down. And we fill this with wood, put the lid on it, but not fastened. And we set that down in the barrel. And then we fill the outside with woody materials. And then you light a fire right here. And that fire will burn down the barrel sides. And without oxygen entering this, wood gases will exit up the side of the barrel from the bottom, and it will add to the fire. And you'll get a raging jet of fire above this can for about an hour. And then what you'll find inside this barrel, once the reaction is done, there is unreacted carbon. And this is the biochar inside. What you'll find is all the woody material on the outside that has access to oxygen will fully pyrolyze into just ash. That ash is full of potassium hydroxide, which is also a source of lye, which is useful for many things, and including building material and fertilizer. It's also known as potash or potash, which is a garden additive. But this biochar is really what I'm after. But both of them are useful, and I save all of it. And we found all types of uses. It turns out that the potash is a useful binder for creating geopolymers. It's a micritic binder. You can use potassium hydroxide to dissolve silica powders into a water glass, and then you can dehydrate them and turn them back into stone. And that might be the secret to a lot of the megalithic stone construction around the world.
I had a question going back to the water table that you had, where you let the water sit for a year, just doing its thing. Do you have issues with mosquitoes? And if so, how do you manage that?
You know, I haven't really had any issues with mosquitoes in the moving water, especially if there's mosquito eating fish in there.
Thing except just water? Because
Yeah,
you're
but
letting
the
it.
actively churning of that water makes it difficult for the mosquitoes. Yeah, it's constantly being pumped. Stagnant water breeds mosquitoes pretty quickly, but moving water is very difficult for mosquitoes. Me personally, no, I haven't. Because there's a bimodal rainfall. If you size your tanks to capture 2 to 3 inches of rain for a normal house that's like 3,000 gallons or something, between 3,000 and 5,000 gallons is a pretty good amount to get your landscape where you need it to until the next rain. I like to use, there's an interesting thing with the way that a cylinder works. So a 6-foot diameter, 8-foot tall rainwater culvert costs me like $1,500 in steel. The same amount of steel can be purchased with an 8-foot diameter, 6-foot tall tank And because the volume is based on the circumference, which is pi r squared, and then you multiply that by its height. Oh wait, it's 2 pi r is its circumference. My bad. Hold on, let me get this right. 2 pi. The area is pi r squared. And then times the height, we can get a volume because then we have a cubic, right? So the r squared is exponential. So by changing the radius to be wider and the height to be shorter, it's the same amount of steel. This weighs 480 pounds or something like that. And I get like 3,500 gallons instead of like 1,900 gallons. And it's the same cost in raw material. That's a little thing that we've figured out over time. So we're always going to want to use the larger diameter pipe rather than the smaller diameter pipe. And then what we found with our customers is that a 5,000 gallon tank is good for 2 people, 2 adults, to live off of rainwater in the Sonoran Desert full time. A 5,000 gallon tank will hold enough water if you're conscious of your water consumption and you use gray water to water your landscape. You can brush your teeth, cook your meals, take a shower, do your laundry, and that 5,000 gallons will get you to the next rain event. And it's because we have a bimodal rainfall. It rains in the winter and the summer. If we were somewhere else, it might not be possible.
Where do you get your tilapia and your koi? They don't just show up, do they?
Yeah, the tilapia and the koi fish come from other people who are raising fish in their aquaponic.
And then once you put them into your system, they reproduce.
Yeah. So once I purchased my first tilapia, I never had to purchase tilapia ever again. I am a vegetarian. I do not eat the tilapia. Yeah. They're just a useful organism for accumulating organic matter. Their metabolism is beneficial to the plants. And other people eat tilapia, and they're welcome to come eat mine. Yeah. We should. You have a question, Nikki? Okay.
Does anybody else have any questions?